So this channel is about my conversations with AI. It is called Chatting to AI. I initially started talking to AI earlier this year, but for some reason, looking back at my history of talking to AI or chatting to AI, I only seem to have maybe back until May 2025 for some reason, which seems a bit odd to me. And most of my earlier chats with AI were more sort of stuff that I would typically search into Google or search Google with. So they were sort of more one-liners, and as I started getting more in-depth sort of later on in the year, like towards the present, which is now, which is September 2025, my conversations or my explanations and questions to AI have become a lot more in-depth and not just looking for sort of short answers to short questions. So I'm going to cover some of my earlier stuff to see, so you can kind of see what I've gone from and how I've developed to. And just to give a bit of background about myself, my name is Mark. I live in Canada. I have been paying for ChatGPT Plus for probably about a year, I would say. I also use Copilot for work, which is allowed by our company, which is basically ChatGPT but the Microsoft version. I find it has less of a personality though. I find that basically all of the AIs other than ChatGPT have less personality. I quite liked ChatGPT 4, and then I was one of those people that was a little bit sad to see it go when ChatGPT 5 came in. But now I've found that ChatGPT 5 is a bit better in terms of its response to especially technical questions. I work in an IT related field, and I found that some of its initial answers were sort of led me down the wrong path for quite a bit when I was working on troubleshooting problems and whatnot. And I find that ChatGPT 5 seems to be a lot more direct and to the point and doesn't get as confused, I guess. Anyway, so this one, the first one here, the first example that I've been talking to or chatting with AI is I'd started like an exercise routine earlier in the year, so I was getting some sort of exercise and health and fitness advice and things like that from ChatGPT, and I found that some of this was pretty helpful, so maybe it's helpful for others. So this particular one is about when I went walking and I noticed that my legs were feeling quite sore after after walking. So I usually talk to ChatGPT on my phone. Sometimes I use my computer if I'm working on an issue for work, or just happen to be at my computer. But typically I talk on my phone, and then I can review the history later on my computer. The history is shared between the two devices. And I turned off that it wasn't shared with OpenAI, if anybody's wondering. So this was my question. After my most recent walk yesterday, my legs are quite sore today, most noticeably behind the ankles, or perhaps just above the bit behind my ankles, if that makes sense. ChatGPT said, this was 4.0, that makes total sense. What you're describing sounds like soreness in the Achilles tendon or the lower calf muscles, specifically the soleus muscle, which sits just above the heel and wraps behind the ankle. Here's what might be going on and what you can do about it. What's likely causing the soreness? Overuse or an increase in walking intensity or distance, especially on hills or uneven terrain, can strain the Achilles tendon and lower calves. Improper footwear, worn out soles, or insufficient support can cause your Achilles to absorb more shock than it should. Tight calves, especially the soleus, which works hard during the long walks and uphill strides, can lead to soreness after extended use. Lack of warm-up or post-walk stretching, particularly for your calves and ankles, can make you more prone to this. What you can do today. Immediate relief. Gentle calf stretches. Do a bent knee wall calf stretch to target the soleus. Hold for 30 seconds each side. Repeat 2 to 3 times. Contrast baths or warm compressors. To improve blood flow and reduce tightness. Massage or use a foam roller or massage gun on your calves. Elevate your feet and maybe add a short compression sock session to help reduce inflammation. Preventing it next time. Warm up with ankle rolls and calf raises before walking. Stretch calves and Achilles tendons after you walk. Strengthen calves, seated calf raises and eccentric heel drops are gold. Track how many steps you're doing and avoid sharp increases in volume. Replace walking shoes regularly every 500 to 800 kilometers if they lose cushioning or support. Now this is a good point to mention because I'm not sure how many people replace their shoes every 500 to 800 kilometers or if they even show signs of wearing out. So up until this point, and I explain in a little bit, that I was using some of those sketches that you get from Costco because they were only $30 Canadian and they seemed like they fit pretty well and were fairly comfortable for my quite wide feet and quite large feet. I wear a size 13 and I have quite wide feet. I tend to wear out my shoes in the top sort of sides on the balls of my feet. And I would have suspected if I was putting on 10,000 steps a day for about 4 months, that I probably would have blown through 500 Ks after about 6 weeks. So the fact that it's saying replace them every 500 to 800 kilometers, if you're buying a good shoe that's maybe around $200, you're going to be spending a significant amount of money on shoes every year if you're doing what I do, which is walk 10,000 to sometimes 20,000 steps per day. Okay, so then it says if the pain becomes sharp, swollen, or gets worse over the next day or two, you may want to rule out Achilles strain or tendonitis, but soreness that improves with light stretching and rest is usually just DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. It then suggests something which it always suggests a follow-up or something like that to help, which I basically never asked for. Then I replied, I said, I use some sketches that probably have at least 500K of walking on them, but I don't think they're designed for walking because I use them because they're quite comfortable for my very wide feet. I was thinking I should be walking in my hiking shoes, though, for my walks around the neighborhood, as most of the places I'm walking is paved, and I think that's quite hard on my everyday shoes. It replied, yeah, that actually makes a ton of sense, and your instincts are spot on. Here's the real talk on footwear in your situation. Your sketches, 500K plus, is usually end of life for most casual walking shoes, especially if they weren't designed with durable midsoles or solid heel support. If they're not specifically walking or running shoes, their foam probably lost a lot of shock absorption already. So even if they still feel soft, your joints and tendons are absorbing more force than they should. Wide feet and comfort is tough to beat though, so I get why you're still using them. Pavement and worn shoes equals a Achilles flare-up. Walking on hard, unforgiving surfaces. Working on hard, unforgiving surfaces like pavement with worn-out shoes causes microtrauma to your Achilles and soleus, especially when going downhill or brisk walking. You're likely feeling that exact cumulative stress right now. Hiking shoes around the neighborhood. Actually a great choice if they have decent shock absorption in the midsole. They're not too stiff or heavy. Some trail hikers are overbuilt for pavement, and you've broken them in and they feel good for distance. Bonus part was most hiking shoes have better arch and ankle support and can take a beating on pavement compared to casual sketches. Best approach going forward. Short term, switch to hiking shoes for your next walk or next few walks. See how your legs feel after. Try an insole design for walking that offers wide foot support. And then it suggested some ones you can find in Canada. consider a new pair of walking or running shoes that are built for wide feet. And then it gave me some brands and some brands and models. So it suggested New Balance 990s or 860s, Brooks Addiction Walker, Hoka Bondi or Gaviota, and the Ultra models or Ultra brand. And then it asked me if I wanted to find some in my city, which I just ignored. But I ended up getting a pair of Hoka Bondis, and they were pretty good for about 4 months, and then I developed another foot problem that I probably was born with, but we'll talk about that in a bit in another video. So that was the end of this conversation. And then in the next video, I'll probably talk about something completely different, because every single thing that I've asked it is just random. But I find that if you want to talk to it, and if you are using ChatGPT or another AI, I would start a new conversation for every new topic that you're talking about. So, and that makes it easier to store your history, because a lot of my stuff is sort of all just bundled into many topics. Like I would talk to ChatGPT throughout that day, and then the next day I'd start a new chat. Whereas I find with ChatGPT 5, every time I open the app, it's taking me to a new chat, and if I want to go and add to the previous conversation, I need to go and look for it in my history and then go and add to that, so it has the context of what happened previously to build onto its answers for that. Unless if you don't do that, it starts getting a little bit confused. Alright, well, thank you for listening to this video, and hopefully you'll stay with me through my chat to AI journey. Cheers.